For many of us, cooking is a practice of many meanings. For some, it has political connotations, others associated with home and their family, but few of us have no feelings, memories, and opinions related to cooking. It seems somewhat odd then, with this very human, absolutely central to our survival, practice has not been explored for its methodological potential in ethnography and the social sciences and humanities in general. Much has been said about commensaliity and conviviality, particularly in the context of connection and breaking down hierarchies, but cooking as a form of inquiry has been suspiciously absent from the equation. Furthermore, when cooking is present in discourse, both academic and otherwise, it is most often in the context of what should be eaten, hunger, famine, and diet culture fueled rhetoric. My purpose is to move away from these familiar relegations of cooking into often private and home adjacent spheres and offer it up as an academic methodology for researching a variety of topics that are not necessarily food related. I contend that cooking as an embodied method challenges entrenched hierarchies present in Western academic research. Additionally, as an activity not traditionally categorized as rational or objective, it calls into question the categorization itself. Further, it is intrinsically relational, its intrinsically relational nature opens up possibilities for researchers for the reflexive exploration of positionality. Most importantly, as a method, cooking is collaborative, egalitarian, and participatory. I say. In summary, I propose that cooking is a site capable of constructively holding the messiness and complexities intrinsic to qualitative research methods, allowing the ethnographer to work through the question of positionality in real time. It is also a site capable of holding the often disorderly or mismatched intersections of theories and practice. So that's what I will attempt to prove in the next 10 to 15 minutes. My interest in this topic arose out of my involvement as an activist and organizer of the Novi Sad Kitchen of Solidarity. The kitchen is an anti-racist, feminist, anti-fascist, vegan space built on three key principles. Solidarity, veganism, and volunteering. It is the only fully vegan kitchen of its type in Serbia. It is vegan because the founders believe that the only way to truly address the harm caused by the current patriarchal systems is with a paradigm shift, one which recognizes that our relationship with non-human animals has masculine and patriarchal roots. It is also entirely funded by individual contributions, not grants or company donations, as it is anti-capitalist at its core. The kitchen's beneficiaries or users, for lack of a better word, participate in the day-to-day workings of the kitchen and decision-making. In addition to cooking more than 200 meals twice a week, the kitchen participates in political action that's useful to it. These activities are issues and events related to poverty and perpetual precarity. That is why we decided to act in solidarity with farmers protesting in Novi Sad in the summer of 2022. Hundreds of farmers blocked off the center of the city with their tractors, promising to continue their blockade until their demands were met. They asked for higher price floors for staple crops like wheat and corn, in addition to better subsidies. So, stop here for a second. This is the kitchen here. You see me here in the shop, behind the shopping cart. And these are all the different volunteers. This space right here, where it says Ovde žive ljudi, is an interesting space because it was gentrified very violently as part of the Novi Sad European Capital of Culture. And there's lots of people living there right now. I think 20 or 30 maybe that eat at the kitchen currently. And this is the cooking for processing farmers. And what happened here is that I was one of the cooks at the time, and when we were cooking, we were all very stressed out because we're a vegan kitchen and farmers are traditionally not vegan. So we were very worried, like, oh my God, are we gonna like food? And it was very much like, I felt very connected to these people. I was worried beyond like, what are they gonna think of me if this food is bad? But I really wanted them to like the food because they were doing something important. So I was connected to them in a way that I would not have been had I just gone to the protest and held up a sign. And if I had done that, I maybe wouldn't have even talked to them. But when we arrived with the food, they were very happy to have the support. And it was it was immediately like a family slash environment of familiarity with people we had never met. So this was extremely interesting to me. And then a couple of weeks later, I thought about how doing something like this impacted, like had I done research on the protest, how it would have impacted my understanding. So the Western tradition situates theory and the researcher somehow outside of events. It is thought the method is a set of tools or a way with which to discover or uncover reality. However, if we use cooking as a method, do we make our methodology more palpable? Can cooking provide an avenue for the researcher's understanding of their positionality in the narratives that they're studying? Additionally, when thinking through how the activities of daily living, like cooking, have been relegated to the sidelines of how knowledge is gathered and organized in the Western scientific tradition, it helps to consider, as Donna Haraway does in her groundbreaking essay on situated knowledges, who is allowed not to have a body. So who's allowed to be the researcher whose senses are, capable of being scientific. The point being made by Haraway here is that scientific discourse and objectivity allows for research being legitimized if done in a finite number of settings and by those individuals considered capable of tapping into their rationality, unhindered by the messiness that comes with emotions in the body in general, that is their embodiment. For her part, Haraway maintains that objectivity is about particular and specific embodiment and always a partial perspective. In other words, knowledge is always situated. Artists are potentially the first to have embraced cooking as a method, but I won't go into those examples here due to time constraints. And a convincing argument for seeking methodology outside the confines of the traditionally academic, and an example of how knowledge generated in such a way situated, comes from Leanne Betas-Monsakis Simpson, a native writer, musician, and academic from Canada. According to Simpson, who explores the pedagogical potential of land, theory is always situated through embodied practice. Further, it is woven within kinetic, spiritual presence, and emotion. It is contextual and relational. She adds, Indigenous education is not indigenous or education from within our intellectual practice, unless it comes through the land, unless it occurs in an Indigenous context using Indigenous processes. We can then see the decolonial methodology, that which stands in contrast to, wholly or in part, the Western scientific tradition, accepts a wider range of sensory information as worthy of being considered knowledge. Historically, food and cooking have been sidelined alongside other activities central to our survival as a reflection of discourses in society at large. According to Warren Bosco, food and food-related activities have been out of sight in academic work and writing. He asks, why this puzzling shyness about food? He attributes this shyness, at least in part, to the Western scientific mind-body dualism, in line with Lisa Helke's work, and a Victorian deep distrust of food, which was regarded as essentially uncivilized. Additionally, Basco roots the shyness about food in another Victorian relic, the idealized bourgeois division between the female sphere of consumption and the male sphere of production. In Eating in Theory, Anna Marie Moll considers how eating can inform being, knowing, doing, and relating. Moll's challenges to Western understandings of eating as a secondary activity devoid of theoretical potential, are rooted in critiques of what she calls the hierarchization of the human, whereby the human is split into two substances stacked on top of one another, a lowly mortal body and an elevated thinking mind. The thinking mind here, if we combine it with the way that is the man's mind. In addition, she criticizes the category of metabolic activities like eating as basic, stating that this line of thinking results in the labeling of touch, taste, and smell as unworthy senses. Moll argues that academic research should take inspiration from the relationality intrinsic to metabolic engagements. That is to say, eating as an activity always entails an interaction with the world conceived as being outside of the body, that is then taken into and becomes part of the body. She adds that eating is an unequivocally asymmetric interaction that does not seek to veil or skew power relations. In other words, as animals, we are never docile to that which we ingest. Instead, we have systematically subjugated the plants and animals we consume as food. According to Moll, the Western philosophical tradition elevates thinking but relegates eating and other metabolic activities precisely because the latter entangles the human with other creatures. In her 1988 essay, Recipes for Theory Making, Lisa Helke asks, could it ever make sense to think of cooking as a form of inquiry? She discusses the similarities between theorizing and recipe development, adding that the latter encompasses many valuable practices that could be used to improve the former. Helke asks, consider theorizing in this light. Imagine developing and exchanging theories the way you create a recipe and share it with a friend. What would such theorizing be like? Helke further boasts of this recipe's immunity, immunity towards relativism or absolutism, both of which she states theorizing is particularly vulnerable to, stating that recipes allow for being fiddled with, but only up to a certain point. She adds, quote, I think that's the quote that's here. No. Learning the limits on a recipe is part of what is involved in learning to be a cook. It's a self-reflective process because in order for me to determine the spirit in which I should receive a set of instructions, I must know what kind of operator I am, how I tend to work with ingredients, and so on. It seems then that Helke is offering recipes as a way to think about grounding oneself as a researcher. Influenced by Helke's 1988 essay, Jennifer Brady explored how cooking as a form of inquiry could confront what she described as, quote, typical disembodied practices of social research. She puts forward cooking as a means of inquiry for carrying out, quote, an embodied relational exploration of identity and power. According to Brady, what sets cooking apart from other activities is that it animates the already established link between food and identity, and thereby makes accessible to inquiry the symbolic, social, historical, and cultural aspects of food as they're incorporated in embodied performances. Building on Brady, I propose that as our bodies already have deep-seated knowledge of cooking out of duty, care, love, and a variety of other reasons, it is possible to use it as a method that explores these embodied relationalities. In other words, regardless of our motivations for cooking, there's always someone we're cooking for or with, even if it is often for just ourselves. This relationality and connectedness is a powerful tool for challenging mainstream understandings of how to approach ethnographic and other research in social sciences and humanities. I've skipped a bunch of stuff here. These are some other interesting writers. There's an argument to be made for the benefits of sitting with messiness as well, thought of as problematic in traditional methods of research, and as something that we must sort out or account for. The cooking as a method lends itself to gracefully. As we have seen, as a side, cooking is at the same time necessary and sidelineable, ordinary but not boring, repetitive yet always evolving, political and private, practice and theory. It is so many things because it is ever present in our lives. As such, it is familiar and approachable. so charged that it can make it difficult for the researcher engaged in it to forget their embodiment. As such, or pretend to forget. As such, it is a gold mine for ethnographers, as it could help lead to more reflexive research in which the researcher and their positionality and impact on the research is visible. It transplants the researcher out of elitist objectivity discourse and onto a path of collaboration, participation, and interconnectedness in academic research.